Two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Reckless speculation.
And a happy Reckless Speculation Thursday to all who celebrate. This is one of the best Reckless Speculation Thursdays because it's the final Reckless Speculation / scoop session with Doogie, KSTP 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department, before all hell breaks loose on the NFL free agency market starting on Monday. Real quick, also on Monday, mark this down. So we are back at the Fillmore in Minneapolis for the 2025 Purple Daily Draft Party presented by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. That's Thursday, April 24th at 7 p.m. Tickets for general admission and VIP go on sale at 10 a.m. Central Time this Monday. Bookmark this website, scorenorth.com/draft, scorenorth.com/draft. It's always the most fun night of the year, just gathering Purple Daily listeners and viewers, Vikings fans, as we have a good time for a few hours and see who the Vikings wind up adding to their team. So scorenorth.com/draft, where you can read more information now, and tickets go live 10 a.m. Central Time on Monday. Doogs, what's going on, dude?
Hi, Phil. How we doing, Judd? Hello, Declan. Happy Reckless Speculation Thursday. Before we dive into all sorts of Viking speculation, a shout out to avid listener / viewer Josh. Moved into the neighborhood recently. I'm outside. It's heart attack snow on Wednesday here in the Twin Cities. I'm looking for my 13 and 10-year-old. They're on their devices in the house, day off from school. They finally come out, but Josh was just roaming the neighborhood. Now, he admitted he knew who I was, right? That helped. He wanted to talk some Vikings, but he had this fancy snowblower. He helped. He helped me conquer the driveway on Wednesday. So a shout out to
Josh. Let's go, Josh.
I had to shovel, so I don't talk about it.
Judd,
I still did a good amount. You know what? It's built-in cardio. That's the way I look at it. Like, it's forced cardio.
Yeah, it's heart attack
like,
cardio.
Otherwise, I'm not doing it. Maybe take the dog.
You know how bad it is for your heart? Anyway.
Yeah, I know. But at 45, I'd like to think my heart is at least okay based on the physical in the last, 12 months or so. I think I'm okay in that regard.
Yeah,
so
People
it's forced exercise. So I'm okay shoveling. But that was not fun snow on Wednesday.
Famous last words.
Boys, the heart of the Vikings is the offensive line. And Kevin O'Connell has been very vocal. Kwesi has been vocal that we need to find. Now, KOC stopped short at the comment. He's like, "Hey, I didn't say we're going to necessarily replace everyone, but they've acknowledged this has to be better." They got pushed around against the Lions and the Rams, and I mean, hell, if the Eagles would have made that interior offensive line look bad too. So let's start there here, Doogs. Meanwhile, the Bears have made 2 trades, a 4th and a 5th, to upgrade 40% of their starting offensive line, including Joe Thuney yesterday.
Yes, and Jonah Jackson a couple days ago. So the Vikings were never in on Jackson. On Thuney, and Judd, you remember the specific details from 2021? The Vikings were in on Thuney in 21, the Spielman regime. I don't remember how heavily they were in. I believe an offer was made. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But the Vikings had all sorts of interest in Thuney in 2021 before he ultimately chose the Chiefs. But in the last 48 hours, yes, there was at least some sort of inquiry. My understanding is it didn't get real far. It was just one back and forth. So it's not like the Vikings were all in on trying to trade for Joe Thuney, but to suggest that they had zero interest would be incorrect. There was at least some sort of, okay, let's gauge what Kansas City is looking for. Can we make this work? Let's at least have one conversation. But my understanding is it didn't go any further than that.
So in 2021, as I recall, the Vikings did make an offer, but because of the cap space and Kirk's contract, got blown away financially. This time, the thing is they've got the money to sign free agents, but they don't have the draft capital to go get guys in trades. So like the Bears have they got draft picks. So I would say that this time around, Joe Thuney was probably impossible to get, because if a team's going to trade, if a team asks for a 4th round pick and you're like, well, hold on a second here, we'll give you a 4th rounder in 2026 with the draft, just over a month away, you're not going to probably consummate that trade. So it's an interesting one, but when you look at all of these trades and deals going down right now, Dukes, I think part of the thing is this is what happens when you don't have draft picks to trade. And the Vikings are in no position, in my opinion, unless it's just an unbelievable offer to trade one of what is currently 3 picks and will be 4 once the compensatory picks are announced.
Correct. Now, I think, there's a decent chance they will look, depending on how the board shakes out, but moving back from 24, accumulating an extra pick or 2, whatever that transaction would look like. But yeah, in this very second moment, we're talking 3 picks with, a very likely compensatory pick to follow. But like right now it's 3. Yeah, probably 4. All signs point to 4, but still that's not a whole lot of draft capital. I do foresee the Vikings signing a guard. I've not heard center steam, just haven't heard that yet. I'm not saying zero chance. I'm just saying in this moment, I haven't heard any sort of Dahlman or Myers or any sort of center steam. But when it comes to the guard position, whether it's the Colt Fries, that's the proper pronunciation, Will Fries, or the Baltimore Raven, those would be 2 guys I would keep an eye on. Continue to hear that Banks, the 49ers free agent guard, not on the Vikings radar.
Okay. Let's talk third wide receiver here, if we may. There's so many receiver options. I mean, there's number 1, number 2 guys out there that teams are going to, Devontae Adams, someone's going to get him. The Vikings are set right now, barring a surprising trade of like a Jordan Addison, which Judd has put that out, and it makes sense at some point in the next couple of years. But
that's funny. Doogie threw that out on Wednesday night, Judd. He came up to me and he goes, "Hey, like trade Jordan Addison. Can they get?" He was trying to concoct some sort of DK Metcalf.
Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. But the Vikings may be in the market. Jalen Naylor has had some flashes. He also had one of the higher drop rates in the league last year. So I'm not saying you like eliminate Jalen Naylor from the conversation, but man, Cooper Kupp is likely to be cut, and the Rams front office has been pretty vocal saying it's unlikely that he lands back here, eliminating all of their leverage to trade him. He's going to be cut with that contract. Tyler Lockett just got cut yesterday by the Seahawks. Both these guys I just mentioned are 32 years old, so it'd be like 1 or 2 year situations. I kind of like Tyler Lockett as just a good number 3. He can block on the edges for the run game, a veteran, reliable presence. You're not asking him to go catch 100 passes. Now, there's been some reports that Pete Carroll with the Raiders looking for another weapon, that they'd rekindle it, and that makes a lot of sense. But if I'm the Vikings and it's a reasonable, $6, $8, maybe $10 million for a Cooper Kupp or a Tyler Lockett, I'm interested in that.
Yeah, and I mean, there may be another name or 2. I don't have specific names right now, but like I'll tell you, it came up in Indianapolis, the conversation of looking to upgrade the number 3 receiver position. Now, okay, Jalen Naylor, contract year, changed representation in the last 9 to 10 to 11 months. I think with an eye on, hey, like thinking about that second contract, I don't think the Vikings are ready to award Jalen Naylor a second contract. So yes, you probably have the full list in front of you, all the names that go beyond Kupp and Lockett, but definitely, I mean, I don't think it's right there with defensive tackle, guard, them needing to solve, the cornerback dilemma. But yes, very much, even running back too, which we can get to, but yes, there is interest. My understanding is in upgrading the number 3 wide receiver position.
I'll throw another name out, actually. Christian Kirk with the Jaguars is about to be released. He signed that 4-year contract, played out 3 of it, only played half the season last year, but and he's only 29. You're going to be 29 years old, and he's been a 1,000-yard receiver. His best year, first year in Jacksonville, 84 catches, 1,100 yards. PFF doesn't love him as a run blocker, which I do think should factor in for your number 3 receiver. Because if you're going to be running, like he'll be out there in what they call 11 personnel, right? Where it's lighter personnel, 3 wide receivers. You need those dudes to block if you want your running game to be better. So I'd look at like Lockett's a better blocker than Christian Kirk, according to smarter people than me. But it's just another name. There's dudes out there.
There's a lot of dudes. I mean, Darius Slayton is one of the better free agents available if you're looking at somebody to be able to stretch the field. Now, I think the Vikings aren't going to meet the price that he'll garner, right? I mean, I think Slayton is going to get a pretty good contract, probably one that surprises many of us. But it is a position, I'm telling you, it is a position the Vikings are at least considering an upgrade at. In fact, I would not be surprised whatsoever. It may not be immediately next week. It may be later on this offseason, but I can see them bringing in somebody that you would look at and say, okay, that player is above Jalen Naylor. On the running back front, continue to hear the Vikings having dialogue with Drew Rosenhaus, the Rosenhaus representation with Aaron Jones in mind. What is that price point? I don't think the Vikings are going beyond $7 million on Aaron Jones. It may even be a tick less than that, but the Vikings want Aaron Jones back. That is priority number one. If they have to pivot, if Jones ends up elsewhere, Najee Harris. My understanding is Najee Harris, a free agent, is on the Vikings' radar.
Ooh.
And then you can draft one too.
Well, I mean, you have to, right? I mean, when
yeah.
30, I mean, Thor Nystrom would tell you guys this better than I, but we're looking at what, 28 to 32 running backs that are going to get drafted.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, just about every team is going to end up or should end up drafting a running back. So yeah, I mean, I foresee the Vikings drafting a running back.
Is Darius Slay a possibility here at cornerback?
Interesting name, right? I've not heard that yet. I mean, he's free to sign, right? I mean, the Eagles released him. He's
Smart.
good to go. Yeah.
Veteran
I've
floor.
not heard that yet. But yeah, interesting name, right? Yes. I mean, you know, let's figure out what happens with Byron Murphy Jr. first. He remains the top internal priority. I know he put some stuff on his Instagram on Wednesday that got some people talking. Was it some sort of back video, or was it some sort of goodbye video? I don't know how to read between those lines. I reached out to some people close to Byron. Have not heard back yet. I just know going back multiple weeks, the Vikings absolutely want him back. But what is that price point? Does his representation think that he can approach Jair Alexander money, $21 million a year? That seems like a bit of a stretch. I'm not sure the Vikings do that, but can you come to a happy medium at like 18-ish, 18.5-ish million per year? Are the Vikings ready to make him one of the 5 or 6 highest paid cornerbacks in the game? That to me is the question, but undoubtedly the Vikings want Byron back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Darius Slay thing is there's a lot of cornerbacks. If you decide that, hey, the price of poker is too much for Byron Murphy Jr., there's some dudes that are around that age 28 or even younger, like Asante Samuel Jr. But if you said, hey, Mekhi Blackman is a guy that we think he's a young starter who's on a rookie scale contract, and maybe we draft somebody else, and rather than paying like $51 or $55 million over 3 years to Byron Murphy Jr., we want to pour that money into offensive line. I mean, Darius Slay's 34. He's a one-year solution, but you could do a lot worse. I mean, Stephon Gilmore was a great one-year solution at age 33 or 34 last year. So it's kind of, and you're not going to be paying $15 million for a 34-year-old Darius Slay. You paid $6 million for Gilmore, so it's probably going to be a lot less than you, but it'd be a short-term solution. They're going to have to go short-term solution with some of these spots because you're not going to be able to get the 27-year-old or the 26-year-old and pay $15 or $20 million for every need you have on your roster.
Well, I mean, they love those one-year deals, right? I mean, there's some level of interest in re-signing Shaq Griffin. And hey, there were some games where he played only like 21 snaps, 18 snaps, 15 snaps. I mean, there were games where Shaq Griffin was barely on the field. But there is some interest in re-signing him. On Mekhi Blackman, the Vikings still have a very healthy opinion of him. As I mentioned the other day, he is doing fantastic. He'll be good to go, fully cleared, heading into the offseason work that ramps up in mid-April, about 5, 6, 7 weeks from now. He's fine. And so the Vikings still think he's got a pretty darn high ceiling. So I foresee Blackman having a pretty big role here in 2025.
So, Dukes, as we talk about this upcoming period now, and the Vikings have a lot of cap space, which is great, but recklessly speculate for me through your sources, because this is a huge question on cap space.
Reckless speculation.
How much do you think the Vikings want to potentially spend on the backup QB? Because the whole, like, if they bring Darnold back, and he's going to have to take a discount, but that's still a quarterback discount. That's not like a slappy that you're going to bring in for a low price. Let's say it's 25 or so. But like, what do you? Because we're all speculating here, and there's a ton of noise out there. The Vikings clearly aren't addressing it. So from the people that you talk to, give me your impression. Because like, if you come and tell us on Monday, Sam Darnold is coming back at $30 million, Okay, that just slashes into that cap space. So what do you think is the realistic conversation going on in Eagan right now about price point on potentially a backup quarterback?
If we get news on Monday, Judd, that Darnold is back for $30 million, I'll be surprised. We all get it. I've been saying it for weeks, right? You guys have been saying it. We all get it. Josh McCown, Kevin O'Connell, others at TCO Performance Center still freaking love Sam Darnold. They love the player. They love the guy. If he'd come back for the same contract as last year, kumbaya. Let's make that happen.
Sure.
I'm not there. Like, somebody reminded me on Wednesday, like this time last year, there was all this steam about Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. Well, what ended up happening? Atlanta lost what? Was it one or multiple draft picks for tampering? That's why we're not hearing a whole lot of Sam Darnold steam. There's a lot of speculation. What could his contract look like? More like Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. He's not getting the $40 million. We think the Raiders might be interested, but we don't know for sure. Maybe Tennessee, but maybe not. Okay, Pittsburgh, interested in resigning Justin Fields. But if that doesn't happen, is Sam an option with the Steelers? It's a lot of speculation. A lot of people directly involved are very cognizant of what happened to Atlanta last year. Tampering is a real thing. To me, free agency should start at the combine or sometime in February. That's a different conversation. But the fact that we have to wait this long, tampering is inevitable. But teams are doing anything they can to not get caught. And it's not like Atlanta was the first team to get caught tampering last year, but it's a real thing in these front offices. I still believe, okay, call it reckless speculation if you want, that there will be enough of a Sam Darnold market that he is not going to be back here. It's just not going to happen. But if he wanted to come back on a sweetheart of a deal, sure, they would absolutely have him back.
But even that sweetheart of a deal is going to be 2 or 3 times as much as he made last year. And now
that's why it's just not logical.
It doesn't. How does it make sense? Right. How, explain how it even makes sense is the question.
And hey, even if he did say, I'll come back 1 year, 13 million or 14, 15 million, just the optics to that. What would that look like? The screams for JJ McCarthy. It just
correct.
The whole thing just doesn't make sense.
If you're him, Judd pointed this out, I think on the Judd Substack even last night. Judd Substack, check it out.
Hard at work last night.
If you're Sam, let's say I don't believe for a second that his market, because of a couple bad games at the end of the year, and I get there's the Jets, I get all the bad stuff in his career, but you're telling me, let's say his market dropped to 1 year, $25 or $30 million. That these other teams want him to prove it one more time. He would be a fool to sign back with the Vikings at that price, because there's a chance he could get beat out in training camp. The Vikings would be welcoming J.J. McCarthy to beat him in training camp to move forward, in which case now he's a backup again with no value, and he'll sign for even less money next year. If he's going to sign for a 1 year, $25 or $30 million prove-it deal because the market's not there, it should be with the Raiders or the Steelers or the Titans, or a team that will allow him to start a full season without any competition at training camp.
I'm with you. I mean, I'd put the Colts into the mix too. I mean, the Colts are going to do something at the quarterback position. So if it got to that price point, would the Colts make some sense? Sam, as representation, also need to realize, in all likelihood, the infrastructure wherever he lands isn't going to be comparable to here. He's not going to have elite left tackle, right tackle, top 2-3 receiver, if not the best receiver in the game, as good a second receiver, perhaps, as there is in the game. Really good play caller, really, really good position coach. So I understand that. But yeah, you would bet on yourself. You would say, okay, I went through a full year of quarterback rehab school. Thank you, KOC. Thank you, Josh McCown. Thank you, others. It's time for me to go elsewhere to see if it translates. It may not, but yes, you don't bet on yourself on a 1 year deal to come back here. You absolutely go elsewhere. I will be curious, Judd, because Daniel Jones, right? Because a lot of us have said, okay, J.J. McCarthy, plan A, J.J. McCarthy, Daniel Jones. I did have somebody tell me a few days ago, it's not a foregone conclusion that Jones is back. Now, maybe that's just to create a bit of a marketplace. I think the Colts would be a team with some interest in Daniel Jones. But if you're asking me for price point, I think it's comparable to that Darnold deal last year. So if you could get Jones back here in that ballpark, 1 for 12 or 13 million, something like that, that to me makes sense. Not 1 for 25 or north of that for Darnold.
And Jones has been tied, I believe I've seen reports in the past couple of days, Dukes, to the Browns and the Colts, to your point. But here's the thing, too. This is so simple. Like if you are advising Sam, you say, it might not work, Sam, but you got to go fly. You got to go. This is your chance to go fly. And if it works, great. And if it does not, you could probably stick around this league as a backup in perpetuity. But the reality is you will never have a better jumping off point. On Daniel Jones, I think that the advice is equally as simple. You should come back here. Because
a full year of quarterback rehab school. Well, yes.
And do you want to, I do like Stefanski, our guy. I do think he's good, but do you want to go to the Browns, who I think are incredibly dysfunctional right now? I just don't see the win there. So I just think that this whole thing, as it's unfolding, and I think this is what frustrates me about the entire topic, is so blatantly obvious. Like it's hitting you in the face who should do what. And yet we're still getting all of this information about, well, the Browns, can you imagine Daniel Jones and the Browns? Poor kid would be getting booed off the field by week 3, probably. And now you're a mess. And now all of the good that was done here with O'Connell is undone. And now you're just screwed. So that's the thing. But I just, the Vikings are in a place for the first time in a long time where they are going to go into free agency with a ton of cap space. And the thought of flushing it down the toilet possibly because you fell in love with a quarterback when you've replaced him already, it's just incomprehensible. Like, take your money and spend it. You saw in the playoffs, guys. Like the Lions have to be fixed. This is not an option. You can't be who you want to be with a defensive line and interior offensive line as currently constructed.
What is the number? Did I see it the other day? 90-something sacks the last 2 years. And I get it. Sacks aren't the end-all, be-all, but it's a simple stat for a lot of people to relate to. It's single digits in terms of interior defensive linemen getting to the quarterback, putting the quarterback on the ground. So think about all the sacks the last 2 years. The Brian Flores defense, the interior of the line. I think it's 90, 91. Phil, you might know the exact number. It's somewhere in that ballpark of sacks the last 2 years. 90, 91, 92, 89, 88. It's single digits. It's like 8 or 9. Interior of the defensive line, getting to the quarterback, putting the quarterback on the ground. It's why Milton Williams is 100% on the Vikings' radar. I don't know what the price point is. I don't know how high they'll go. Like we knew in this space last year, Christian Wilkins was absolutely on the Vikings' radar. They tried. They tried heavily. Vegas blew them out of the water. It's possible that happens again on Milton Williams. But 100%, I'm convinced they are in on Milton Williams next week.
We've got more from Doogie Scoop Bag here shortly, but I'm going to dig into the frozen pizza bag here for a moment, and let's pull out one of these Pep's Legit pizzas that you see on the YouTube channel. I will describe it for the audio audience, too. That crunchy crust, robust sauce, that melty cheese, stone-baked, cracker-thin. Legit pizzas are likely in a grocery store freezer section near you where you can have that authentic at-home pizza parlor experience. I recommend all the flavors, but the sausage and mushrooms, if you dabble in those 2 toppings, chef's kiss. Pep's Legit pizzas. So, all right, let's get back to the scoop bag here. What else? This is the last chance we all have to talk before all hell breaks loose on Monday. What else should Vikings fans have their eye on here between now and Monday or Tuesday?
Well, I mean, when does a restructure happen? A reminder, restructure isn't somebody taking a pay cut. It's just moving money around. But Brian O'Neill is a very logical restructure candidate. So when, I think it's when, not if, when do the Vikings look to restructure that contract? Now, on the cut front, Ed Ingram, logical candidate. I've checked on some logical extension candidates. Guys like Metellus, Josh Oliver. It sounds like the Vikings are going to wait a little bit, at least on some of those fronts, that they're not immediately looking to extend, that there's other things to worry about right now. And so that to me is later on. That's, on the eve of the start of training camp, late July, or the eve of the start of the season, early September, that they don't need to extend those guys immediately. Sure, interest, right? When meeting with the representation for these guys in Indianapolis, certainly verbalized, hey, like, we want your guy here for the next few years. We don't want to lose him this time next year, for example. But it doesn't sound like anything is happening immediately. But certainly, look, interior of the offensive line, interior of the defensive line. I'll be curious to see, how does the Murphy market unfold if he's not back? What does that then look like at the cornerback position? And so much, Phil, would have to change. I heard it again Wednesday night. So much would have to change for Cam Bynum, one of my favorite people in that locker room. So much would have to change for Cam Bynum to be back in purple. All signs right now. I get it. It's fluid. Things can change. One new call, one new conversation. But as we sit here on Thursday morning, it just doesn't look likely. It's been this way for many weeks, but it continues to not look likely that Cam Bynum will return.
It makes no sense for Bynum, who I think that you're right, Dukes. I think he's gone. Murphy in particular, though, you don't walk yourself up this close to sign now. Like, if I'm him, I get to Monday, because I think that there's a chance with his position and the season he is coming off of that he gets an offer elsewhere he can't turn down. So I would say this as we speculate about guys putting out tweets and Instagram things. I would say that the reality is it's probably like it might mean something, but I don't think it means, you know what? I took myself up to the Sunday before the legal tampering period started, and I just decided to sign. I think it would be foolish and a bad business decision if you are Byron Murphy Jr., not to get out there and potentially get blown away by a team that's in desperate need of a premium position player.
Amen. And hey, the industry scuttlebutt is Jets, DJ Reed likely gone, Giants, Bengals, Saints, Colts, and a few more. Now, not all those teams have cap space. Like, I don't know if New Orleans can offer Byron Murphy Jr. some monster deal, but the scuttlebutt is those are at least 5 teams with some level of interest in Byron. But again, some of it's, informed speculation, but, those who really need to share the information, I'm telling you, it's just,
your tampering thing's a great point.
Little different this year with the tampering. It's even ramped up more so. Like, we get it. Tampering's happening, but the leakage seems, it's still there to some extent, but maybe not quite the same as in years past. Do we also want to get into what Mike Florio brought up, which piggybacks off some of the stuff we talked last Thursday
on KFXN radio yesterday? Yeah.
Yes. And so I get it. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that Kwesi was down with an illness. That was what was said to many people. And hey, it makes sense. Kwesi couldn't be in the room last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, battling an illness. He was down for the count. We've all been there. At least I believe we've all been there.
Not during the combine.
I'm still there. Yeah.
Not during the combine, dude. I was out there every day. Hungover.
Sure, hungover, yes. We've all overcome hangovers. But if you've got COVID or if you've got, the flu that's got your temp at, 102 something, whatever it might be, right? Like, we've all been there where we're stuck in bed. So it absolutely could be that simple. But I'm telling you, the way it was told to me was KOC was so prepared. It wasn't one of these last second, hey, Kwesi can't make these meetings today. Kevin, you're in charge. That he was so ready to lead these meetings, that he was so impressive. Multiple people left the Vikings suite thinking that guy knows exactly what he wants, knows exactly how to lead the front office. He knows exactly how to build a roster. He's got this vision. He knows how to articulate what he wants. That I had now multiple agents tell me Kevin was more impressive than many of the general managers they met with. And so this wasn't a last second deal. So, it's Thursday. Recklessly speculate. What does this mean long term or even for the next handful of months? Does KOC now have more of a voice when it comes to roster management? Was this just a one-time deal? Kwesi wasn't feeling well. It's worthy of discussion, and now I see it's reached a national level.
Yeah. And, generally, Kwesi was awesome last year in free agency. And time will tell on the last couple of drafts, especially J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner. He wasn't drafting those players in a vacuum. He's getting a lot of input from Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. But Monday is going to be really telling. Yeah. Monday is going to be telling. And I know I've gotten crucified the last 3 days for my stance and takes on this. But if Darnold comes in, if everyone lurked in the weeds and played the game of poker to perfection, and essentially the Vikings were unaware that there was an actual market out there. Like if Darnold signs for $45 million a year, which would still be $10 million a year less, $15 million a year less than the top of the top two tiers of the quarterback market, then I think it's fair to criticize Kwesi and the Vikings for botching a tag and trade. I mean, Jarvis Landry got tagged and traded. Frank Clark. A lot of players get tagged and traded with far less value than a top 15 quarterback. If he signs for $32 million, all right, cool, I'll take the L. But that is something to watch on Monday. Did they botch the tag and trade situation?
How long does a trade take, though, to consummate? Like, you're eating up, right? With the tag, it's eating up. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's eating up your cap space, right? So if
until
you're trying
you trade
to do
him.
a bunch of things in a short amount of time,
yeah, there's some danger.
It's tough.
There's some danger, but
to me,
Devontae Adams got traded before the league year. Frank Clark was pre-draft, I guess. But
I understand there are examples, not as many at the quarterback position, right? But there are examples. But I'm just saying a 2026 third round compensatory pick, signs point to that. I get it, that there's enough risk there that I'm okay with the way the Vikings have treated this. Now, hey, I get it. The optics won't look great, Phil, if we have news on Monday night or Monday late afternoon that Sam Darnold is on his way to the Raiders. 3 years, $115 million, something in that vicinity, right? We're all going to say, what the bleep? Yep. There had to be a tag and trade. I understand it, but I do get, in this instance, I get where the Vikings are coming from. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
So the Florio report, I thought too was intriguing because and like Mike recklessly speculates, which I love, but he was basically saying that there was confusion about who's in charge there. Is it O'Connell? Is it Kwesi? Who's doing what? The first thing I would say off that is we do not know. I'll go back to we do not know how they operate from a standpoint of the fact that they have an GM who is not a traditional GM. I will say this, the talker is, and it's been brought up, and it's an intriguing one. The talker is this. If Kwesi's contract extension is not signed by the draft, and he basically does a draft going into the last year of his contract, that becomes really intriguing there. Like you would think that the team would like to have the stability of him signing the extension before he executes a draft, because if he doesn't, that creates more questions. So I think there's some flexibility here, some grace to be given to the Vikings because they probably do have a very unique front office structure that a lot of teams don't have. But that being said, I also think that there are some fair questions, and those questions I think become more frequent and probably more of an option to ask if your GM does not sign a contract extension here fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, I still sense the extension gets done.
Sure. I'm
more curious to find out, if we can, what exactly is the wording in that extension, the new contract?
And that's what not done. Is
it the same amount of time, term? Does it match up with O'Connell through 2029? Right. I have questions like that. I don't necessarily right now have a question of whether it gets done, but fair. If it's not done by April 26th, okay. Let's start asking some more questions. And you're right. Is it possible going back 9 months? This is the way the front office has operated. I haven't heard the word confusion, not to doubt Florio. We're probably not talking to the same people, but I just not in that ballpark yet of hearing that word confusion. But certainly these people that met with the Vikings, KOC, just came away just thoroughly impressed. And it was different from their meetings this time last year at the Combine.
Yeah. Great stuff, Dukes. We are way past our allotted time. We do have to go.
Matt Canarino, shoulder strain, looking at 6 to 8 weeks, if not more. It's just another injury for the Twins pitching prospect. Very unfortunate.
All right, Dukes. We'll check in the middle of the ruckus on Tuesday with you for another scoop session. Great information.
Remind me on Tuesday, too. I need to look into – okay, so Glenn Taylor has until May 11th to appeal. Again, I'm not quite sure what on the grounds he's going to appeal. But, like, this luxury tax bill, this $90 million luxury tax bill, who's on the hook for that the longer this goes? Like, the longer it goes, Glenn is on the hook.
Yep.
So if you're Glenn, don't you just say, okay, I lost the arbitration case. Mark, Alex, it's your team. And guess what? You're paying that luxury tax bill. So I need to dive deeper on what the optics and mechanics of that look like. I mean, that's one hell of a way to go out. Push this thing out as far as you can, but then hand Mark and Alex one hell of a luxury tax bill.
Yeah. Here you go. Sign below. 18% tip on that if you want. Maybe 20. All right, Dukes. Great stuff, dude.
Boys.
Enjoy your weekend, and we'll do it again next week. Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd.